Hi, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the station or the host. Always consult your primary care physician about any medical advice. Folks, this is June, as you know, and June is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. And I want to encourage you all that if you have any concerns about your memory, please talk to your primary care physician about it, about getting screened. And I very much want to encourage people have a concern about your brain health. Keep your brain healthy, eat healthy, exercise, do what you could do. And I also want to reach out to the gay community. It is a Pride Month, and my support group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement, is open to everyone. And I want the LGBTQ plus community to know that you are all welcome in my group. If you are a caregiver and are looking for support, or if you or your loved one have any type of dementia, you are welcome in my Facebook group. And today I have with me a special guest. I have with me today John Campbell, who was a caregiver for his mom, and he wrote a book. He's author and writer of the book Beyond the Fading Memories, Guiding Words for Dementia Caregivers. And John also has a theme song, Love Remains, which is on Amazon and all music platforms. And I could tell you, I listened to the song, you will cry, it will touch your heart. It is a beautiful song, and I encourage everyone to listen to it. And I want to welcome John Campbell to Chatting with Betsy. Welcome, John.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
You are welcome. I'm so glad we were able to connect, and I just like the title of your book, and I know that you are very into music also. But I like to know, I'll start with, and I always ask all my authors this, is what motivated you to write your book, The Fading Memories?
Okay. Well, first of all, I've been a writer, the talent of writing since I was 18. It started out actually with lyric writing, where I wrote like 20 songs in 2 nights, or lyrics that I thought were poetry, but later more for lyrics. And I went to Columbia College for creative writing in the 80s, but then I got sidetracked with an unrelated business. But in around, the 2000s, I started to think I want to get back into writing. And so I had already self-published several books not related to dementia. But so I was just kind of moving from book to book. And my mom died in 2019 with dementia. I had written 2 different genres of books in the fiction because I wasn't ready to write a story on that yet, but I knew that I was going to, and one of the reasons was, although there are other memoirs written on dementia, was that a lot of times the stories are swept under the rug. They're not really talked about because everybody's so tired after dealing with it. And, of course, the person who has dementia, unless they're talked to in earlier stages, doesn't really get to express what it was like. But also it was partly because this is what I do. I really became moving towards, I'm not there yet, but a full-time author after my mom died. So this was my agenda after the last fiction book that I had written. And in 2021, I wrote it up. But then I got more guidance on self-publishing after that because I wasn't having such good luck with the marketing. So in 2022, I basically spent revising the book and getting more professional help with that book. And I wanted to add value to the book other than just being a story. So one thing that I added in, besides getting a more professional cover with the music theme, was some words at the end of each chapter called Guiding Words for Dementia Caregivers. I also added that into the title, which wasn't there before. And these are simple principles that I learned to go by for different stages. It would relate to the chapters. Music is pretty much listed in all of them. So that's kind of what, partly because I'm just a writer and that's what I do. And number two, I thought there's a way I could help with this and get the awareness out. I'm especially passionate about the music for dementia side of it.
Yes, music is definitely, and it's been proven, John, as you know, to help people who have Alzheimer's and other dementias.
Yes.
And you can see that. I know with my husband, Matt, Matt loved Johnny Cash, and when he had progressed, I would put Johnny Cash on to feed him, shower him, anything that I wanted to do to help calm him down, so that sometimes he would sing along and I could get his daily care, taken care of. And it's amazing. My father also, he was in a facility. My mom brought him all his records. My dad was from the big band swing era, and he loved the music. So it's really amazing the effect that music has on people. How did you see that with your own mom and how music affected her?
Well, originally, I think one of the first times I realized it was the case, my mom was the youngest of 5 children, 10 years younger than her oldest sibling, and one of her brothers was in World War II, along with a sister's husband, or they passed away, but and my mom and dad, who were back together after a divorce, and he was with her during the dementia. They were watching a World War II movie, and there was a song in there, and she knew it word for word. That was one of the first clues. And then one of the bigger times that really instilled into me, because I lived with my mom for 7 years as her caregiver. I was sleeping. My mom was already up and had gone out to her screen porch on her condo. There was one that overlooked the front where there was more people coming in and out and stuff. And I was woke up to her singing America the Beautiful in perfect tune, word for word, even going into the verses that I'd have even heard. So I realized right then, and she did no care in the world. The birds were coming to the bird feeder as they always did, but kind of sitting there. And I realized this is powerful. I've got to help my mom with music because it just changes her mood. So I actually put out an ad to in the Complex paper about getting some women to come play piano, and immediately 2 women that had mothers with dementia who also played piano began to come over and play for her. So that was one of the things, but I also got an iPad from a music program with all her favorite songs. Any chance I got, I would put on music, whether it be on the computer, the TV music channels, CDs, whatever it was. And there was never a time that it bothered her to have the music on. It instantly changed her mood, and she would just, so that was really the key moment, was that day when that came out. And then I did see some specials on it. I can't remember it was on YouTube or on a public television.
Yes. I'm thinking time goes by so fast, like a year or two ago, and I don't even remember the person's name. They did a scientific study about the music. And
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, go. If you weren't finished, you can.
Oh, and then I saw this video, and it's been around for quite a few years. Caucasian Jewish woman singing to an African American woman, "Jesus Loves Me."
I see.
And the woman started tapping, and she knew, she connected to that song. Right. So music is just so universal that it was a very touching video to see.
Well,
did you ever see that one?
I may have. Jack Cohn was a social worker who did a lot of experimenting with the music, and that's where I'm not sure if he's from out east. At the University of Wisconsin, where they've done a lot of Alzheimer's work, they did do a music for dementia study. Sometimes I've gotten some backlash saying there's not enough studies to verify everything. But I do know that the part of the brain with dementia is that music memory part of the brain is barely touched by dementia. And one thing that was brought up on another interview I did, and I already had seen this, but with Tony Bennett with his dementia, and he got together with Lady Gaga, and they toured, and they said that they interviewed her about it, or I'm not sure. But basically, when he went out to perform, he would remember everything word for word and play perfectly. And then when they talked to him afterwards, after he got off the stage, they asked him what year it was, and he had no idea what the year was. So that just kind of Glenn Campbell did the same thing where he did a show. So, yeah, it's pretty amazing. Although in some cases, it's through my book and feedback, at times there was some people that dealt with this more said, well, not in every case. There can be cases where they may not go back to music. A close friend of mine was an accomplished violinist and music teacher, but she hasn't really, she broke her arm, for one thing, with her dementia, but she hasn't gone back to that music at all. It was such a big part of her life, and it's hard for her to trust that she could actually play to the level that she wanted to, so she just is choosing not to. And, you would think, we wish that it would be good for her brain, but, there are some cases where it doesn't work. But most of the time, the response from music is just, amazing. I mean, they have choirs in Milwaukee here that are filled with caregivers and dementia people, and I don't know how much they're doing after the pandemic, but so there's a lot of that going on too. So
yes,
quite frankly, I feel it's kind of under promoted to the music. I mean, they do it at a lot of facilities and stuff, but I don't think people realize how influential the power is and how good it is for people with memory loss, people with dementia. So I think it needs to be taken even more seriously than it is.
Yes.
I know there's facilities that are really doing a lot of it, though, at least here in Wisconsin. Now that air quality is getting me.
Yes. Okay. That's fine. That's funny you mentioned Tony Bennett and Glenn Campbell, because I was going to mention them. And it's incredible. Like Tony Bennett, still how he performs and his voice is still wonderful. And Glenn Campbell, I think towards the end of his touring, he would have the words there. But, I mean, just to know, like, to play the guitar, just to remember that. I thought it was fascinating that my husband Matt, he would whistle. He remembered a tune to whistle it. It drove me crazy to hear him whistle, but he would whistle a tune. I'm thinking, this is like, to me it was so mind-boggling that he could remember a tune and whistle it and didn't know how to pick up a fork. It's just such a baffling disease. There was another video I had seen a few years ago where a man was, you could tell by looking at him, he was, out of it, and they put music on. I forgot what the song was, and it's like he came back to life. He was clapping, he was singing. I don't even remember the name of the song. It's really phenomenal. I've encouraged people many times on my show, play the music, not that you, the caregiver, like, but what your loved one likes to hear.
Yeah. And two words of advice with it. Actually, this person I was just talking about, Jack Cohn, had put out a message not that long ago on Facebook, said, don't wait till the later stages to find out what music they respond to well. Do it early. Don't wait, because it's going to be more effective. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, and I'm sure it was the case even with Tony Bennett, Glenn Campbell, depending where they're at, it's not as easy like when the women would come play piano for my mom. When I told her about it, she was not happy. She was not all excited saying, oh, this is going to be great. I love music. No, her dementia was there, and she was like, who are you bringing into my house that you didn't tell me about? And she went and hid in the bedroom. And it wasn't until she just slowly came out and the woman just started to play. And then also, not always did they always play all the time. Some of my moms would get off on tangents, telling stories of her past. I would just sit and talk with her. But usually once the music was playing, she would just immediately respond. So it's not all as easy to get the music to them. You're still dealing with the rest of the dementia. But I will tell you, in the studies done with Jack Cohn and some other people, they found that people stayed in relaxed moods for hours after music, sometimes even longer than that. So it does also have a little bit of a lasting effect with it, not just while the music's on.
That's interesting. Yes, there's a lot of music. I think you see more music therapy now in different facilities than probably ever before. If they're allowed in, now that the pandemic is kind of subsiding.
Yeah, my mom fell and broke 13 bones at the day center, and she ended up in a facility. When we were at the hospital, she was in the hospital for 2 weeks. During that time, my nieces and nephews would come in and sing with her. She would sing along. And then when she entered the facility, up until the week she died, my nephew was coming in, my niece and nephew, they were playing with her. I gave her her iPod. A lot of times, if she would, she would listen to it the entire time. When I got there, I'd play music. I got a little frustrated because they lost her iPod. And again, they didn't take it seriously enough. They aren't even taught at the time. They weren't even taught that this is as big of a thing as it is. So they didn't understand that it was a big deal that she couldn't listen to her music. So, I'm just saying we did it up until the end. My mom had listened to music with me days before she died. So it really doesn't matter when or whatever, but getting an early start is better because then you can find out what they really like, because they aren't necessarily going to remember their favorite people. My mom was a Neil Diamond fan, and she didn't even remember the songs when I played them. But others, sometimes out of the blue, other ones she remembered. She remembered some Bob Dylan songs because they were done by other artists. Most of the time it goes back to their teenage years, mainly, of what they would remember.
Wow, I like Neil Diamond myself.
Twice I took my mom to churches to their Christmas shows randomly. We just drove over, walked inside, and sat down, and my mom just sang through it all. Never been in the church in her life, under the suggestion of a friend. Sorry.
It's okay.
Air quality from the fires out east. Okay. In Canada, I mean. Okay.
Yeah, it's really it's just mind-boggling to see it. John, you and I have a lot in common because I'm going to just say from my experience, and this is really, I guess it was meant to be, the room that Matt had in hospice, he had to go up to the hospice unit, they had country music, and they had some of the music that Matt liked, so I played it for him. I played him music, and a lot of people don't realize that hearing is the last sense to go. And this is just my personal belief. I believe that God created us that way, for hearing to be the last to go, so we could listen to people say goodbyes and listen to music and to know that what people are saying around us. It's just phenomenal. Actually, a week or two before Matt died, he told me that he heard music. There was no music playing at the time. And I said, that's your angel band.
Right.
And I believe he did hear music.
Yep.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I believe that he heard the angels. But that's my belief, folks. But that's really what I believed. Go ahead. I knew his time was close at that time.
On some Facebook posts that went out to a lot of people, I did get a feedback over the winter of a guy in Cleveland, which is originally where my family's from, who now works in, not really for Alzheimer's, but general cognitive issues in hospitals. But when he was younger, he had been in an accident and he went into a coma. He was in a coma for 72 hours. His mom came in with his favorite songs on a little device. This was a long time ago in the early 80s. And he woke up from his coma when she was playing that music. So that was a pretty powerful story that I heard from somebody.
Yes, I have had heard similar stories. So your book, This 80 Memories, Guiding Words for Dementia Caregivers, you tell the story of your mom, and you are also encouraging caregivers.
Yes. And what I'd say about caregiving, one statistics that I just heard recently, well, first of all, 1 in 3 adults now are diagnosed with some form of dementia, and there's over 100 different types. There's also more people caring for their loved ones at home with dementia than there are in facilities. And I want to be careful, everybody's different. Everybody's got a different story or circumstance, and some people really, they don't really have an option except to maybe put them in memory care or whatever. We did have my mom in memory care for a short while after my dad died, because I used to share the caregiving with my dad, sort of. I mean, he would take her on the weekends. He had a restaurant in retirement, and then the rest of the time I had her. And then near the end, before he died, he had her more and more. But I do feel, and maybe I'm going off topic from exactly what you wanted me to talk about related to that, but I'm no expert, but I know that the amount of dementia is going to increase a lot.
True.
possibly even double by 2030 or more. And I just don't know if there's going to be enough facilities or the money to pay for all this. And people are stepping up. I know people that are caregiving, and everybody's different. It's harder for some than others, but I think we're going to have to step up to the plate with it even more than we are. And I know it can be horrible. I'm not a big fan of talking about how horrible dementia is. That could criticize a lot of people because almost everyone says that. To think of it that way, because it really doesn't solve any problem. I like to think of it as it's a cognitive issue in their brain, and they are still the same people. People used to say that about my mom. She's not who she used to be. To me, she was. All the other stuff is just surface level, but her spirit and her emotions were still there, and you kind of have to work around all the craziness coming from the memory loss. But anyhow, yes. I might have got off topic, but it's easy to sit here to say hindsight, but in the midst of the caregiving, a lot of times it was extremely stressful and seemed like I'm thinking in my mind, you don't even know what I'm dealing with siblings who weren't there at the time and stuff. But I definitely, the best thing I ever did was go to the ADRC, the Aging Resource Center here, on a recommendation of a friend with my sister, and buckle down, and I started going to support groups, and my sister took the financial end of it, so we sort of teamed up. And the support groups made a big difference, although that place is actually shutting down because they lost their funding, and they've been going here in Wisconsin and around the country. I don't know how it is around the country, but in Wisconsin it's shut down, the Dementia Alliance. They don't have enough money or help. So,
that's a shame.
I'll
yes.
let you ask some questions rather than go on this longer tangent here.
Well, you know what? You're right, John. I mean, I was just discussing today in an early interview, and I always discuss this on my show, that, people don't know about resources, which is one of the reasons why I do my show, is to provide people with resources that I wish I knew about. We don't know about resources in our own backyard. I know I didn't until I had to know. And caregivers, once someone is diagnosed, caregivers don't know what to do. Right. When my mother-in-law was diagnosed in 2000, there wasn't much information then. There was no support. I didn't even know you had hallucinations and sundowning with Alzheimer's. I didn't know all that came with it. And right. It's such a big difference when you're educated and when you're not. I know in my own case, when Matt started hallucinating, I knew how to handle it.
Right.
And it makes for a much better caregiving journey for the caregiver and the person who has the dementia, right. When you know what to expect and what to do. I'm a huge advocate for advocacy and education, with knowing your person's diagnosis and knowing about it and researching it. And now, of course, in the year 2023, I feel, and this might sound harsh, I've said this before, and I am a Jersey girl, so I say it like it is, there is no reason, no excuse at all for a caregiver not to educate themselves now or anyone else. Internet is flooded with information. You could go on YouTube and get information, which was not available. I think the pandemic, because people couldn't go to seminars, more people started to do seminars even for free during the pandemic. It was flooded with people with information. Excuse me.
The only thing I will say, kind of not contrary, but I think there's truth to this. And I've always been a person, like I have a business that I started on my own with no training. I tend to be a self-starter, but I'm on one of the many, or there's at least a few Facebook sites for dementia, kind of venting site, and a woman who had been in the field for years working with dementia people and then had experienced it with a loved one had said it didn't even compare to when she was doing it as a profession, and not to knock people who are in the profession are good at it. But my point is that, and when I went to my first caregiving groups, the woman who now died, who took care of her father with help from siblings, had constantly said, it's trial and error. It's trial and error, and it's really about living through it. And that's where a lot of the value of experience comes in. And I know on these groups, a lot of people say when their loved one dies, they say goodbye, and then people say to them, hey, could you please stick around? We need your experience and your help. And some have already planned on doing that. But I think that's another thing, and that gets back to the thing about being swept under the rug, because people are tired and they don't want to deal with it. And it's up to the person, though. Nobody can force it, and you got to do what you got to do to take care of yourself. But more people who have been through the experience need to be there in some form or another. That's why I've been looking into that possibility. But so I'm just saying, a lot of it's just you can learn all you want, and it's helpful, and I did apply some of those things, no doubt. But it's when you're in there, kind of in the war zone, you're kind of learning as you go what works and what doesn't. But certain things I did learn, like we took my mom's car away, and, you'd think she would forget, but she didn't forget, because they have their emotions still, and when their emotions are charged, it stimulates their brain at the time, and it's something that just keeps re-triggering in their brain. So for the rest of the time I was with my mom, which was probably 5 years, my mom every day complained that her car was stolen, that my brother-in-law stole it, And I learned early on from going to support groups that it didn't pay at all to scold her or try to convince her that didn't happen. It was better to just let her talk, validate her feelings, and sometimes I just had to kind of play along with it. One time a woman who was just a customer of mine somewhere else had said, sometimes you just need to pretend you're in a play when you're with somebody with dementia. So I would actually just go along with her and talk as if what she was saying was real. And then she wouldn't get as riled. But, on the other hand, it was very taxing. That happened all the time. But she would get very talked about it.
Yes. Well, I agree with you, John. Reading about it and living with it is two different things. And when I speak to people who are, a professional like a social worker, or maybe they're a certified dementia consultant or practitioner, they have said that, doing it professionally and then personal is way different, and of course it is. In my opinion, if I was looking for someone to help me, I want someone who's been through the journey so they can understand me and understand what it's like. And also, this disease is so unpredictable. What works one day may not work the next, or even in the course of a day. They change. When Matt had his hallucinations, yes, you learn to be great improv actors. That's for sure.
There's so many different types of dementia, and when you get into Lewy body and some of those, they're more complex. A customer of mine's husband had that, and she didn't even want to read or review my book because at first she said yes. She just didn't want to even go back to thinking about it. But she does do a lot. She does a lot of research. She showed me how I could get tested, you know. But my point is, yeah, some are more complicated than others, and, you know, because there's 100 different kinds, so.
Right.
Not all of it's classic Alzheimer's.
Right, right. There's a lot. And I agree, you know, with you, John. I feel like it's my responsibility as a veteran caregiver to help others navigate the waters. And I know what it's like to be alone. I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like not to have support. I went crazy joining support groups when I got on Facebook 2014. I did. And then I realized, wow, other people feel like I do. I'm not alone.
Right.
And I, you know, learned a lot from other caregivers. And this is why I've encouraged people for years. Share your stories. Tell your loved one's journey. Show their pictures. We need to put names and faces to this disease and personalize it. And I don't know why people are afraid to. Because, you know, the women with breast cancer, they lobbied. They came out. People with AIDS came out full force. And because they came out to say, you know what, we need a cure. We need help. We need something. We need treatment. Right. And, you know, like Alzheimer's is well over 100 years old and no cure. Hopefully medications are coming out now that possibly may slow the progression if they're approved and if people could afford to take them. That's a whole other story.
Yeah, here in Wisconsin, the Dr. Chen from the university, one of the big breakthrough recently is not so much that, but now I can't remember. It's a way of detecting the dementia through blood samples at an earlier stages. That's probably one of the bigger breakthroughs. I think a lot of people don't understand that probably the biggest breakthroughs are really going to be early detection breakthroughs where something can be done early. It's not going to be people in later stages just suddenly taking a pill and now it's gone. So I think that's where it is. But a friend, my sister's best friend, works studying Alzheimer's medications every day, plus takes care of his mom, although now she may have gone in the facility. So, that's why I haven't done it yet. When I had an author coach for this book who doesn't know anything about dementia, he suggested going to the coaching. He was kind of being general, but I was considering, I didn't really call it coaching. I called it dementia guide, and it would be sessions for dementia online. So nothing real long, extensive, and it would be just a guide through, getting prepared for it and dealing with some of it. I'm not sure whether that's going to happen or not. When I did kind of reach out, I heard somebody said they were doing it, actually weren't doing it, and they said they'd never even heard of such a thing. I mean, I would imagine there probably is somewhere, but I think more of that's going to have to happen because also a lot of facilities are just too expensive. People can't go to them. People don't understand that. I just read on a local post on a county group, there's a man at a hotel staying there with dementia by himself, and his money ran out, and so they found him there, and they sent him to the hospital, and the hospital people brought him back there and plopped him in the lobby, and somebody found him there again. So I'm just saying, a lot of people think, oh, dementia people have families. Dementia people have somebody to take care of them. They're getting the help they need. They can afford to get the help. That isn't necessarily happening everywhere. So
true. That's very true.
And a lot of people don't understand dementia or how to deal with it, so they kind of just they don't do anything with it. Hopefully he's getting the help he needs because enough people found out and they know the agencies that deal with it directly. But, yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. How did you come up with your song, Love Remains?
Okay. Well, first of all, it's based on something that happened when my dad died. That was in 2018, August 2018. And ironically, our roots are from Ohio. And we went to a family reunion, which was also celebrating my mom's great uncle who won a Purple Heart in World War I. It was the 100th anniversary. And we weren't sure we were going to be able to take my mom because of her dementia, but we did take her. And it was interesting because all her siblings had died and only cousins and stuff were there, and we saw their parents' graves and everything, and then we left. My dad said goodbye to the state. We had lived in 4 states as kids, and he hadn't been back there in quite a while. And then suddenly he was actually a surgeon, not recently. He was well retired, but he ended up having an intestinal problem, and he went into the hospital and okayed an operation to be done on him by the surgeon who took over from him, and they thought it was not going to be any problem. Well, then in the middle of the night, I got a call from my brother who ran his supper club that he had in retirement with him. He said, Dad died. And I was at home with my mom, and, he paused for a minute. He said, I'm on my way. I'll be on my way, And then I decided, what am I going to do? Am I going to tell my mom what's going to happen? And I decided not to tell her that he had died yet, but hey, we're going to see him in the hospital. My brother came over in my dad's car, and we drove over. And I decided to let my sister tell her as we were going into the hospital. And when we went up to the hospital room, now my mom was also a psychiatric nurse, so she spent a lot of time in hospitals herself. And she saw my dad, and it's like she instantly came out of her dementia state, and she knew he was dead. And the odd thing was, the night before, she actually woke up calling for her dad. Now, that could have been a hallucination, but it almost seemed like the message was already there. And she came out of her room looking for him a couple times. But anyhow, what happened was she came out and she got all calm and kind of got all our attention. And she just started saying, God is love. And then she mentioned Aunt Rose, which was a family member in my mom's side, my mom's sister, who was a caregiver in the family during the Depression and throughout her life. She was a teacher, but she actually carried the family through the Depression because she was the only one with a paycheck. And she encouraged my mom to become a nurse. So the 2 words she said was, God is love, and we'll never forget you like we never forgot our great Aunt Rose. And then she kissed my dad. And everybody just kind of sit there sort of stunned because my mom almost seemed normal. So later, when I was thinking, because I write lyrics all the time, and I was thinking I would eventually write this book, ironically, the night before she died, which I didn't know she was going to die, I was the first time when she was in the facility with her broken, that this was years later, not 10 months later after that. She was in a facility at the time, but I decided the words started coming to me to the song, and I hadn't seen her that day because I had to go to a celebration where the person that wrote the song was playing at my health club, and I wanted to be there. It was like taking a break. My brother had seen her and read poetry with her that day, but I wrote that song, and then the next day my sister called on the way to her work in another town saying she got a call that Mom had died after breakfast at the facility. So it came from those words that she said, and then the rest just kind of came to me. And I used that as a theme for the book. I knew it would be called Beyond the Fading Memories, but it needed more detail. So when I write lyrics, they simply just kind of come out. That's what happened when I was 18. I literally wrote 20. You could call them poems if you want, because until they're put to music, they're not actually lyrics because they have to fit some kind of melody. But usually they're in me already. So that's what happened. And I had to push a little bit to be able to have, my sister didn't have a problem with the song being sung or anything, but I pushed a little for that, and then doing a eulogy at her memorial. So that's how it happened. And then later, my parents had died just before the pandemic, and after going through the caregiving, the pandemic for me was almost like a godsend. It was like I didn't really need to work at the time. My work was closed down. My business that I have wasn't really happening, and I was able to concentrate on my writing and my music, everything. And the first thing I did was planned out recording sessions with Bradley Fish, my close music friend, and we brought in, a well-known mixer or sound person who had done bands and rock like the Smashing Pumpkins and things, and we master recorded the 2 songs so they'd be ready. And nothing else really happened with it other than I entered a contest in 2021 worldwide, and it came in like 5th place. But it's on Amazon, and it's on all music platforms. But since my book is on Amazon, you can just go right below the book, and the song's there for 99 cents or just to listen to, or on my Facebook pages.
Yeah, it is a phenomenal song, and it is very true. Love does remain, and love is a very, very deep, strong connection, and it's really hard for me to put into words that I had such a deep connection with my husband, Matt, through the Alzheimer's. And, I always said for years, dementia can rob the brain, but it cannot rob the heart of love. The heart knows love, right, and the heart remembers love. And that's why I tell people, keep talking to your loved one. They may not remember you. They know your voice. They know your love. They remember the love. It's so hard to explain to people, but I understand about the pandemic. I was grateful for that too, John. I needed to rest. Right. I sure did. But thank you, John Campbell, for coming on today. And your book is available on Amazon, The Fading Memories, Guiding Words for Dementia Caregivers, and your song, Love Remains, and it is right underneath.
Yeah, it's actually called Beyond the Fading Memory, Love Remains, which was the original title of the book. So you have to go by that title, although, maybe you got an idea there. Maybe that should just be the title. But for now, it's the same as the book, but Love Remains is kind of the co-title or subtitle of the song.
Oh, okay.
So John Campbell and Bradley Fish.
Okay. What's the full name of the song, John?
Beyond the Fading Memories, Love Remains.
Beyond
Love Remains.
Oh, okay. And that is true. Beyond the fading memories, love does remain, because, I'll always carry Matt's love for me in my heart. And just like you'll carry your love for your parents, in your heart. And I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story. A lot of interesting stories you have, John, and it was a joy talking to you. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And how can people get in touch with you, John? That's what I want to ask you before I forget.
Well, getting in touch with me, two good ways are, for now, emailing me at fadingmemoriesguide@gmail.com if you want to, have a direct conversation. But I do have fadingmemoriesguide@gmail.com. I'm big on Facebook, which is under my regular name, but I also have the Facebook page John Campbell Writer, which a lot of posts and even other interviews and things are on there. Plus, I could communicate there.
Okay. All right, for people to communicate with you.
And the books, Amazon in Kindle or paperback on Amazon.
Okay.
For the book and song. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. And, folks, the information about John Campbell will be in the blog that Jeannie White, who's station manager, writes. So please read the blog. Very important for the information about the guests, what they have to offer, what they're about. And I want to thank Lillian Cauldwell, who's CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible. And I want to thank you, the listeners, for listening, subscribing. If you haven't already subscribed to Chatting with Betsy, please do so. It is for free. I'm on iHeart, Spreaker, Spotify, YouTube, to name just a few. You do not want to miss any of my phenomenal guests that I do have on from all walks of life. And I just want to encourage people to please share the show to help other people. That's what my show is about. And the more people share, the more people I can help, and it honors my husband, Matt, his memory. And I just want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing. And as I always say at the end of my show, in a world where you could be anything, to please be kind and shine your light bright, because if we all did that, it would be a much kinder, brighter world. And, oh, yes, before I forget, you could follow me on my Facebook page, Betsy, B-E-T-S-Y, middle initial E, Wurzel, W-U-R-Z-E-L. You could check out my Facebook page and see what I am about. Mostly promote and about Alzheimer's and other dementias, because I believe in raising awareness. And that's what I have to say today, folks. Thank you so much again. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Bye-bye now.